all the ways that you can introduce it to a society.
Mhm.
All of it, really, because I'm just lucky I can do as well as I do on my Mac computer. I still struggle. Like, I need a new printer, and I'm like, how? What the heck do I need to do?
You don't know where to start. Hi,
Yeah.
Mike.
Hey, Josh, Gina, Dave. Yeah. Printing is always the last final frontier, the hardest obstacle for me, you know?
Yeah, I got to buy a new one and set it up, and then a year or two, I need a new computer actually. So I'm gonna have to like teach myself how to set that up and let it run and see how much I screwed that up.
Yeah, it's getting hard. It's getting more and more complicated, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I've never done it.
Okay.
I've had lots of help and I didn't know much about it, but now I'm getting adventurous. So I'll try it myself next time and see what trouble I get myself in.
I'm sure you'll figure it out, because even though things are getting more complicated, it seems as if, systems are just getting tailored for people like ourselves who, like, at least for me, who really don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah,
but I can still make it work.
right. Well, I'm getting braver about looking at control things and trying to figure out what they mean by something. Because in my mind, I'll look at something, well, could take that 3 different ways. Which one is it? And now I'm like, well, try A, B, and C.
Yeah.
See what you get.
It's kind of hard to break it, Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm discovering.
Yeah.
And I used to go through the
Whole new world.
Yeah, and I used to go through the pages and then I would close them down the same way. And now I just go out of here.
Plus, I don't know what kind of machine you've got, but I mean, they've
Mac.
got power cords as, like, you've got the ultimate say, and they just pull the cord
Yeah.
and say, it's like,
Hey, Josh, how was your hike?
It was good. It was good. We finished all the peaks we needed to. My girlfriend and
Where'd you
her
go?
mom to the Adirondacks in New York.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's right.
And
Yeah,
so
I've been all over Maine
nice.
all summer long.
Oh, that's
oh,
great.
nice.
Oh, yeah. I've been on,
Hi, George.
6 to 8.
Hey, everybody.
There.
Maybe probably 8 hikes this summer.
Wow.
Great.
Well done. Nice.
That's a good excuse. Get
Yeah.
outside. Okay, let's wait one more minute. 7 o'clock.
Hi, Jordan.
Hey. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Talk about hiking all day. Anything outdoors.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a techie, but I love learning what we're going through here.
Well, hopefully this experience has also empowered you to be more brave with your computer and with technology. It sounds like it has.
Yeah. Well, and it's my little tiny contact with people. I don't have a lot of contact.
Yeah, it's certainly hard.
So that was a accidental bonus.
Good. Okay, sweet. All right, it is 7:01, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Good to be back in
There's
Maine.
Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan.
Okay.
Let's see if we have any public comment. Let's see. Don't see anything in the chat. Okay, we're live on YouTube. Good.
I don't see any attendees.
I don't see any either. Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the approval of the minutes. Did everyone get a copy of them from Mike?
Yes, and thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
I move we approve.
I second it.
I'm fine.
Moved and seconded by Gina. Any discussion?
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, please.
Thank you. All right, if there's no discussion, I will call for a vote. Gina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mike, how do you vote?
Yes.
David, how do you vote?
Yes.
George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jordan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jonathan, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's unanimous. Okay. All right, moving on. Discussion about the Lincolnville Broadband survey. So the survey is still going strong. We currently have 189 responses.
Nice.
Let me share my screen. So luckily, the vast majority, they're residents of Lincolnville, so that's good. Majority are full-time resident. This is actually the first time I've looked at it in a while, so. The trends roughly look like they're holding to me. Let's see, let me go down to something a little more interesting. So this has been pretty stable. 72% are not satisfied. 27% are.
Wow. Huh.
Low speeds, not reliable, high cost, poor customer service. 29% students.
Josh, on this student graph there, the selectmen, at least one of them, just didn't think that that one made sense. So I just note that they just felt that those numbers really didn't seem to be representative of what they expected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. David, by the way, you gave a really great presentation. Thank you to the select board. I thought that was a really well-rounded sort of presentation on what we've been up to.
I was unable to see it, unfortunately, and it also hasn't been made public on YouTube yet.
I watched it on YouTube actually when I was in New York.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
You should be able to find it.
Huh,
Yeah,
that's strange.
You may have, I don't know if you subscribed to that
No,
channel. You
I
may have to
do.
do that for the new things to show up.
And then we have lots of different comments. Are there any parts of the survey so far that any of you would like me to go back to, or?
No, oh, go ahead, Gina.
Are all the costs pretty similar or does it vary?
Let's see. Let's take a look. What do you currently pay?
Yeah, kind of all over.
Yeah, the bundle with other services is 29%, and it's just so hard to break down what that actually
Yes,
costs.
that's right.
So, and then we have a lot of individual numbers here. 80 a month, that's 10%. 90 a month, 7%. 100 a month, 4.5%. 110 a month, 6.7%. And then 70, 60, and then there's all these.
That's really confusing to me because anybody who has LCI is paying $90 a month or more. It's impossible for them to pay less. So I don't, those numbers confuse me.
I'm not sure. I thought I saw a flyer for LCI that said they're now charging 50 a month.
Like you have to get a bundle with telephone, and I just know that you can't, that it's like exactly $99 is really what it comes out to. So I don't know unless they've changed something. And they called me a week or so ago asking if I was interested in fiber optic because they were thinking about potentially hypothetically doing something on my road, even though I had multiple times, written the request multiple amount of times. So, I don't know. I don't think that they've changed their policy. And I think Jonathan even just mentioned the last meeting that they were talking to him about having to, for some reason, regulatory reason, offer or force people to take telephone as well as internet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's why I don't know how, unless they're going through counting their phone or something, it just doesn't make any sense. And those numbers confuse me a little bit. Maybe people misinterpreted or something.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe
Or
the bills
maybe-
are just confusing too.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, it may be $50 to get internet, but if you have to get a $40 phone service in order to get that, I don't consider that to be a $50. And you know what I mean? Like it's still costing you $90 a month. So
Jonathan, were you about to say something?
No, I was just going to concur with what Jordan was saying, because I had called about conflicting offers online where one offer was, I think, at least $10 less, and I call up and I said, well, I have this package, why is mine $10 more? And they said, well, you have to have the phone service where you are, and I never really got a good explanation why that is, that I had to have the phone service here, and in a neighboring town they didn't have to have the phone service.
Okay. Also, a little update. So we had an article about the survey in the Penn Bay Pilot run a few days ago.
Yeah.
And I just spoke with Susan Muskovich at the Camden Herald. So I think she's going to watch this meeting, and she'll have an article on Village Soup relatively soon. I emailed the school committee about getting into their newsletter, and they told me the school committee itself doesn't have a newsletter, but Paul Russo sends updates out. So I'm going to email him and ask if he can add a link. And there's a Lincolnville Community School community Facebook page as well that will hopefully get someone to post to. And I have not put up flyers yet. I apologize, but that is on my list to do in the next week.
Do you want help with that?
No, I think I'll be okay. Yeah, thank you.
Josh, do we, the selectman asked like what our goal was for response, and Mike and I weren't totally clear. Do we have a goal for what we're trying to get to?
I mean, my personal goal is at least 25%. We're already, let's see, there's 1,600 homes. We already have 189 responses. That's not quite 25%, but I think once we send out paper versions to all the existing addresses, I've got a feeling we'll do pretty well. I guess instead of response rate, to me the bigger question is when should the collection end? And for now, I don't see a reason to set a deadline in stone.
I'd say as long as the committee is open, we should be collecting responses. And that, I mean, because I can think, I just think that the more responses we get, the more information we can get, and the more we can inform the select board that, hey, the town is on board or they're not, because I feel like that's a really important thing right now.
Yeah. And the survey, I mean, it's free. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
So there's no harm in letting it run.
Okay, but when doesn't come down to us getting some money, a budget to mail these guys out? I thought that was the plan.
Well, when I watched the last select board meeting, it sounded like the select board just wanted to hear what we wanted to do. It sounded like once we told them our plan that the select board would find monies to do it. And so the way I see it happening is I send this list of addresses to David Kinney of people that have already filled it out. He subtracts those from the addresses in Lincolnville. And we basically just get if we could get those addresses printed out, and then just stuff envelopes and send them off. And then when we receive them, we could have perhaps a socially distant data entering party at the town office, where we just, we keep the responses at the town office, but we fill out the survey for each one.
Sure.
That could be a fun activity.
Do you have a sense, Josh, of what's reasonable for getting the mailing out, like time frame?
I don't know how long Well, I mean, it all depends how long it takes David Kinney to get the addresses printed out.
Yeah.
As soon as he does that, I mean, we could be stuffing envelopes and get it done in a few days.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I mean, I feel a little bit different than Jordan in terms of being too open-ended. I'd like to see us, wrap this up by early October, or, sooner than later. I got
Yeah.
the sense from the selectmen, they wanted us to, kind of keep moving.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Let me think if there's anything else I had about the survey. I don't think so. Does anyone else have any comments on it?
I think the response rate has been great, so I think we're off to a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 5, discussion about report to present to the select board. David, thank you for sending your ideas. I do think that because the select board wants to look at our charge and hopefully renew it, it seems premature to give them a report by their next meeting. But what do you all think about that?
No, I would agree. It sounds as if it would be rather confusing asking them to just to process all that information.
Well, whereas they just received an update, I don't know that, we're certainly not in a position where we can give them an action item yet. So I would say, if they've received the information that, we've gotten so far, what we've done, I don't know that we can really act on that yet and give them a recommendation of here's what you need to do, or here's what we recommend.
Yeah.
What would be the intervening steps before sending the report?
Well, to me, the first thing is to go through the survey, go through the results. What I want to do once we're at a point that we, perhaps a stopping point where we feel like we have enough responses, I'll send out the spreadsheet to everyone of all the data, so we can all take a look at it. That'll be a public document. And I think, when I would like that spreadsheet to actually be available to the public. Maybe we redact the addresses so people don't, they don't have that information. But then we can really go through and see trends and sort of come up with conclusions from that. I don't really know though, besides, I guess, speaking to more people about their experiences with broadband in their community. I'm not sure what else we need to do until we have the survey results.
I just
think
wanted to say,
there's,
I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, but since it has to do with talking to and dealing with the select board, again, I really want to see the meeting. I will look again and try and see if I can find it, but I was told by a couple of people that the select board decided not to appoint Stephen Coltai to the broadband committee. And I just wanted to say that that was disturbing to me. And since we have 2 select board members in our group, I just wanted to kind of implore you guys to make a push to have Stephen put on the board, especially since in the last 3 meetings or so, it's been a scant bunch of us, and everybody does what they can, but what Stephen would bring to the table is invaluable. And I think it's extremely important that he join us in our efforts on the broadband committee. And I wish that I had been present for the meeting so that I could have said that or written that myself. But I think that that's to me, that's extremely important.
Yeah.
a couple of thoughts. I do think we have to give the select board a sense of our schedule. So I think they do want to hear from us, how much time we want and kind of what we'll be doing during that time period. The other thing is, I think we're going to need the consultants, at some point soon. I mean, I hope either this meeting or next meeting, we can see if the group kind of shares consensus on what we want to do at this point. But at that point, we really need more expertise, and we really need somebody like the consultant that we talked to. So I think we have to figure that out. When are we going to look for some money from either Island Institute or the town to get that next layer of help. So kind of the way I see it is explaining schedule to the selectmen, figuring out where we all stand to see if we kind of have a mutual outlook on things, and then get the expertise that we need.
Okay. Mike, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to, jump back to what Jordan was saying. Yeah, if you watch the meeting, Jordan, the select board decided to table, not, they didn't chose not to appoint the person, but they decided to table both appointments until they had looked at the charter to see if it needed to be tweaked. They felt as if it didn't make sense to appoint them and then change the charter 2 weeks later. For what it's worth, I argued that they should appoint them. The sooner they get on board, the better. Get up to speed, the sooner, the better. But there you go.
Yeah, and that, I mean, this is the last thing I say, but that is what I also got the gist of. But I feel like I don't know. I don't feel a sense of urgency or expediency coming from the board, and I feel like every time something's presented, it's like a hurry up and wait kind of situation. So I don't know what we can do to help stoke a fire, but at this point, I feel like we as a committee are pretty have coalesced around what we're going to do or how we want to move forward. And at this point, it's turning to the select board and asking them to grant the power, the funds, or whatever it is to take that next step. And David, you're completely right. The next step is really getting this consultant going on some of this work. And we've already, in my opinion, wasted 2 months. I don't mean that in a negative way, but you know, yeah. So sorry, that's
Well,
To that regard, are we asking the wrong questions in our survey then? Because I kind of feel like we're asking questions that we already know the answers to. Like, do you like your internet service providers? We don't have any. So we know what the response is going to be to that. But would it be more powerful to our select board to hear how many kids couldn't attend remote learning because they don't have adequate internet service? Or how many people aren't able to work remotely because they don't have adequate internet service? You know, make it a little more personal so that we're able to quantify the issue. I kind of feel like right now, a lot of the questions we're asking, they're a little more touchy-feely, but we're not quantifying the issue.
mm-hmm. I definitely see your point. I think it's challenging because, yes, I agree. A lot of the questions we're asking, I think most of us kind of knew the answer to it, but I think it's still important to have that, have people from the public say, yes, this is in fact how I feel.
Yeah, we needed a starting point.
And I would love to know the answers to those 2 questions that you asked. I just don't know how you ask that without leading. And they also seem like really specific questions.
well, and also maybe because we've been at this for some months, but I don't know why there is this trepidation or fear that we're somehow manipulating or you know what I mean, or leading this. I mean, this is something that is pretty fairly well agreed upon, which we can already see in the small section of results that we've gotten. So I feel like while I want everything to be fair and transparent, I just don't think that this is that kind of situation. And I almost feel like this one, we're just spending a lot of time dancing around something for no reason. And I feel like it's time to just pull the trigger already. I don't know if that makes sense, but I also at the beginning was worried about leading questioning, but what are we afraid of? I mean, people, it's not like these are people of weak wills and that we're hypnotizing them in some way. I mean, we're asking about a very specific situation because we frankly just went through that exact situation where kids are home and they needed to access their studies through the online, through the internet, and that's still true. So, I mean, if that's a leading question, then I really have no problem with it because it speaks to what's directly affecting the people who live in the town.
Well, I guess my thought would be, we have a survey that's out there. And I think that Josh is well, supported in the thought that we want to be able to reach, say, perhaps 25% return. I think that the idea of going out and then amending the survey is going to just make the survey less worthwhile. I mean, we're stuck with what we've done. I think there's information in the survey. It does seem to me that bringing the survey to some kind of a tipping point in terms of response is probably the way to go, and that would be a predicate to making recommendations. I also think that if you're on the select committee and you're diffident about this, the thought would come to mind, well, you're going to have a certain number of people who are perfectly happy and aren't even going to answer the survey because they're fine with it. Surveys tend to bring out the people who have an axe to grind. All of us, I suspect. So my sense is, in terms of moving forward, maybe having the survey get to the next state, so we can have something complete. We've gone out, we've polled the town, and then make the recommendations. I would also concur that, until we get a consultant here, we've sort of gone as far as we can. I think the question is really in terms of going to the selectmen, have we made our case? And I think the case is going to be made on the basis of the survey. So I think, Josh's thought that try to get the survey through the next stage, and maybe that's with the mailing, and then to go and make the recommendations. And I also wanted to just say, I thought David's, summary was apt. I think it could be, the basis for a recommendation. The recommendation essentially being, we have the survey reflects a substantial percentage of the town who've been motivated to answer this. They're not happy with the service. Our recommendation is to move forward, and the next step would be to get the consultant. It does seem to me getting the survey into the next stage would be helpful. I don't think it's useful to go back and change the questions at this point. I think you can sort of pull out of that survey most of the points in terms of, how many people are working from home using the internet. That's one of the questions that's answered, right? So it seems to me that just getting the survey together then becomes the stage of making the recommendation to the committee, rather than doing it while the survey is still going on. It seems to me we want to reach a point where we think we've gotten the information from the town and then make the recommendation. That would be my sense.
George, I have to say, I completely agree with everything you just said. We need to remember that the select board, and maybe all select boards right now in Maine, are very sensitive to spending any additional money. And going to the board and saying, our recommendation before the survey is done is we should hire a consultant because we want to get started now. I just don't think they're going to say yes. And I think that's going to hurt the case for hiring a consultant even after the survey. Going to the select board with the survey, empowered with the actual data from the public, I think is our best case. And making a case multiple times for money, I think can be challenging, and we could be shooting ourselves in the foot. As much as, personally, I would love to hire the consultant right now. I think that every day we don't have him working is a day that is a missed opportunity. But that's not, that I don't think that's the will of the select board.
That makes
Yeah,
perfect
I would
sense.
agree.
So why don't we push to get the survey done and then plan to have ourselves lined up with the information on the Island Institute grant and the recommendation for the consultant, and just be ready to move quickly after we get the survey information back to the selectmen, and also start getting people in town behind the idea of putting some money into this. It's not going to be a lot of money, $15,000, but still getting community support for that.
Yeah, and considering we just gave everybody back a nice little chunk on their property taxes because we had income in the last budget year. I know people are adverse to spending money, but this is a problem that's not going to go away. So we definitely need to approach the select board very gingerly, because they just aren't that amenable to this, and it's like a scared rabbit. We don't really want to scare them away, because it's important that this gets done. And I feel like that it makes it even more important to have some public support behind it, because it can't just be the committee, the 8 people or 10 people that are on here going to them. They really need to feel some pressure from the public, which I think most of us know, because I don't know about you guys, but I get like still 3 or 4 emails a week from people who are new people who have, I just heard that you're on the committee and they wanted to know what's going on. So it just, whatever. I'm not explaining myself well, but there's a little disconnect between the board right now. I feel like this issue and maybe the citizens and how important it is. So if we go in there half cocked, it's not going to be good, in my opinion. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, I think what the board wants to see right now, I'm not speaking for the board at all, but I get the sense that they would simply like to have the survey results and feel as if it was conducted properly in the sense that it's fairly representative. It actually might say something, or at least we can interpret something from it reasonably, and that it hasn't been messed with. That is, the data, we didn't change horses in the middle of the stream. We selected halfway decent questions, and simply give them that and say, here's a few options that we think perhaps you need a consultant for, and let them make the call. If you want to try to persuade them or prod them towards a decision along those lines, you can do a lot of things. Jonathan, you mentioned how many students aren't able to get access or decent access, or how many businesses really need. Have a business person, enlist business people to speak at public forum. Get an educator to speak to those numbers. But I wouldn't include it in any recommendations we have, or change the survey for that.
Well, maybe this is where you and Josh can help with what the select board needs to hear. Because in terms of the survey and its results, I think what we've had, the response so far is very good. Usually you would hope for about a 10% response, and we're well above that. 25 would be a huge amount. That's like knocking on everyone's door and expecting to get an answer. Yeah. And that would be wonderful if you can get that. But I think we have a pretty good sampling of the questions we're asking. And even if we did achieve a 25% response, I don't think it's going to change the answers that we've received. Mm-hmm. So I think we have a pretty good sampling in how the community feels. So if the select board would like to hear those results, then I would say we're in a position that we can share them.
Maybe I'm just being an overachiever, because you're right. I just calculated roughly a 12% response rate, which is, you look at presidential polling, it's 1,000 people for a country of 300 million.
I don't think we have 1,600 households, do we? I think it's less than that.
That's what LCI said, but
yeah,
I don't.
That's high. I think there's 1,600 people, right? So I think it's about 1,000 households. I Googled that last week.
2,100 people in Lincolnville.
Yeah, I think there's about 1,000 or 1,100 households is what I got Googling it, but that could be bad info.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, but Josh, but we have to understand that the presidential polls that spend years and thousands of, millions of dollars figuring out the correct sample size.
Right.
We haven't done that. We've just opened it up to whoever can get on the net.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, so
but
I don't know how representative that 10% or 12% is.
Well, I think it's a good number of people, and I think that the answers are pretty clear in terms of the way you have 60 or 70% unhappy with the current situation. It does seem to me that based upon the insights from Josh and Mike, that what we don't want to appear, even though we are in some ways, is advocates who are sort of making a case that this has to happen. I think we've been sort of charged to go out and find out what the feeling is in the town, and we've done that. And the feeling is that this needs to be fixed. And it just, again, it just seems to me that's the way to play it. You base this on the survey, and then maybe give some more thought to what we add to that in terms of suggested action. We don't want to, I think, over demand, but I think there are timeliness issues that we sort of talked about in our last meeting that indicate it's probably time to do this. Among other things, the lapsing of the franchise agreement with LCI, the availability of funds. I mean, we can sort of lay those out as part of the circumstances that we've discovered in fulfilling our charge, and that they add up to people want to have this happen, and this is a good time to do it. And then try to be delicate to reflect the notion that we have. We don't want to come at them too hard and be dismissed as simply having run away with this.
I agree with everything that you say, George. However, I do tend to think, and I'm no statistician, that we might want to argue for continuing the survey onto a mailing phase.
Okay.
And having an even larger sample, because none of us are statisticians can say this is a really good sample size, the 10 or the 12%. We don't, and so I'd rather err on the side of doing too much and mailing it out.
Can I?
Well, what do we think? Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Well, I just had, it's a very quick question because it has to do with our, what we've come to as far as finding. Have we come to any agreement, or can we, or do we, as far as working with LCI to get them public money? Can we at least make a recommendation to the select board about that? Because I feel like that is a very cut and dry, black and white situation.
A recommendation not to, or
whatever. Mine would be not to, personally. But I feel like that's an important issue because again, when I talked to LCI on the phone, because they called me, they mentioned that grant as an impetus for them doing the build out on my road. So I feel like that's an important part of what's going on. And I didn't know, I just read through David's email, which was really well put together, but I could have missed something, and I wasn't sure if that specifically was in there or not. But I do feel like it's very important to not recommend that.
Well, I think maybe the position would be that it would be premature to recommend it, because that sort of implies you're going to go in that direction. And what I think we've come up with in terms of the committee is that there are other options. There are things happening around us that would perhaps indicate that we don't want to, bet on this particular horse of LCI at this point, but to look at the other options, which then takes you into the notion of having the consultant come on board. Because why would we want to, commit to getting the funds through LCI, at a time when we haven't really decided we want to continue to dance with them? I mean, again, that's just my thought. Jordan.
I'd like to talk about this a lot more, but Josh, are the panelists here? Should we go to them and then come back?
Oh yeah,
to this
Deborah's been waiting very patiently. I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's move to agenda item 6 with the chair of the Camden Rockport Broadband Task Force, Deborah Hall. I just need to tell David Kinney to bring her over.
Good point.
Okay, I'm not actually running the meeting, so asking David to do it.
This is a great discussion. I just didn't want to keep her waiting.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh.
Magic.
There we go.
She's got a nice boat.
Yeah.
Hey, Deborah.
Hey, Deborah.
Hi, not my boat.
How's it going?
Good. Sorry, you guys seem to really be rolling there. Sorry to cut your discussion short.
Yeah.
We could have gone on for a long time.
Yeah.
I know
Knowing
how
this
it
group.
goes on select boards. Yeah. So,
Great. So, Deborah, do you want to start by just telling us about the Camden Rockport Broadband Task Force and the work you're all doing?
yeah, sure. I'm sure you guys know that Rockport had done a private public partnership a number of years ago with GWI and has about a mile of fiber optic infrastructure, 1 gig fiber optic infrastructure that serves the town buildings, and anybody else who wants to jump on. And we jumped on a number of years ago and had to pay about $1,000 per telephone pole. So in our case, we brought it down from the library and personally paid $3,000. And that's not money that goes to GWI for the most part. It's money that goes to CMP for the rental of the poles. And anyway, it's been fantastic. And so I don't know how we would exist business-wise without it. But anyway, before I was on the select board, I was on the technology committee, and we were kind of handed a task. We weren't asked our opinion. We were just handed a task, which was to build support for a continued Tilson consulting agreement that would have cost the town about $300,000. And the voters had voted that down. And really, in hindsight, that's a good thing, because you can do this for a lot less than $300,000. In any event, now that I'm on the select board, I have been, pushing to bring this back, and there are a lot of residents who would like to, to see the fiber optic opportunities expanded. I think that Camden has on their comprehensive plan that they did a couple of years ago. I think that I know that one of the top 2 or 3 priorities for the town of Camden in that comp plan is to bring fiber optic to Camden. So anyway, so given all of those things, we started sort of an ad hoc Camden and Rockport unnamed, kind of technology, broadband, whatever committee about a year and a half ago, something like that. And it was mostly consisted of Camden people. Again, it was ad hoc. I was on it for Rockport. There were only 2 of us on it for Rockport. You might have seen some of the articles that we published. We published them, we drafted them, published them under Audra Kaler and Bill Post, the 2 town managers' names. They were published during the winter, and I think they pretty much finished about the time that COVID hit. There were about 7 articles all told that were in all the media. We focused on, like, one was telehealth, one was, telecommuting, and, economic development, all the various aspects of fiber optic. Obviously the education part of it. And so then now, now with COVID, obviously people are taking that to heart, and there's more interest than there ever was. Sometime during this period, Camden and Rockport, the 2 chairs, me and Bob Falciani, and our boards decided it made sense to form an official task force. So we called it the Camden Rockport Broadband Task Force, and we have 3 representatives from Camden, 3 representatives from Rockport. During the last, even going back before we had that really, informal ad hoc group, we had spent a summer a couple of years ago meeting with a whole bunch of people, investors, Fletcher Kittredge, who we know real well from GWI, LCI, others. And at that point, I think the thinking was, you guys might find this interesting because I heard you talking a little bit about surveys. At that time, the thinking was, if you do a survey and the survey comes back with, 30% take-up rate or whatever, then you're going to have investors who are going to be interested in coming in and do something. Then that thinking, and with most of the people that we talk to, has changed over the last year and a half. And now the thinking and the recommendations that we've been getting is that you really need to go out and do an RFP. Go out and put together an RFP and send that out. Obviously, you're going to send it out to GWI, to LCI. Pioneer Broadband does, some broadband in the state. And they might be interested. I know they've said in the past that they might be interested in serving this area. and do the RFP, send that out and see try to get an estimate of the scope of what it would cost for Camden and Rockport to go this direction with fiber and the various options. You know, there's always the issues, as we all know, about somebody who's down a mile down a dirt road and how do you get them, you know, the same fiber optic and at whose expense and all that kind of stuff. So do it in such a way that we don't necessarily dictate that it has to be a particular speed or a particular type of technology, but broaden it out. So anyway, we then went to, with all that in mind, we went to Mission Broadband, who we had some contacts with. It seems like in our digging around, and we might be missing something, but in our digging around, there's only a couple competitors to Mission Broadband. One is Casco Bay, I think, in Portland area, and another is a national group whose name just escapes me at the moment. We ultimately decided not to go to Casco Bay. We were dealing with Mission Broadband. They're local. We were happy with Mission Broadband. We don't have to go out and bid it because it's a consulting agreement. So we just entered into an agreement with them. Both Camden and Rockport select boards agreed to commit no more than $10,000. We got a proposal for about $18,000. So no more than $10,000 per town. And they're going to put together all of the high level engineering work of what would be needed in Camden and Rockport. And that would be an appendix to the RFP that goes out. They will prepare the RFP, send it out, manage the process, come back, help us assess, the apples to apples comparisons and stuff in the RFPs. And all of that we're getting done for $18,000. And we're not doing the surveys because so much, a lot of the concern that people have is that people don't know what they don't know. And the surveys that you get are really pretty skewed. Having said that, we did Mission gave us I don't know if they did that for you guys or not, but for no cost, they put together a short survey that we posted on our Facebook and town website pages, both Camden and Rockport, during the COVID virus, which really was focused on, how are you doing during this COVID period of time? It wasn't necessarily as exactly the type of survey that you guys might be thinking about going out and fashioning. But it did show obviously a lot of need and desire for more reliable, faster internet.
So Deborah, would you say that Camden and Rockport, that it really looks like both towns are going to move forward with some interlocal municipal broadband service?
I think it depends on a lot of things. It obviously depends on the numbers that they come back with. But that's the intent of certainly of the broadband task force. And I think the majority of probably of the two select boards, I think. But that changes a little bit from elections and so forth. But that is the thinking. But I think that I personally feel that it's really essential that we do this in a way that doesn't raise the mill rate, doesn't raise taxes. And I think there are ways to do that, like Baileyville and Calais. It's just one example of, they put together a regional, and just tell me if you know all this, but they put together a regional utility, and that regional utility, did long-term municipal loans. They got long-term municipal loans. Camden National Bank was one of the entities that had submitted a proposal. They ultimately went with another bank, but we talked to Steve Matteo at Camden National, who has indicated they'd be interested in doing a loan in this area. That's been a while ago.
And so that kind of loan is not paid off by the taxpayers, but rather the
regional utility. It's a regional utility that actually is able to take out the loan, as I understand it. In the Calais Baileyville situation. There's also the ability, and some folks like in New Hampshire, I think what they've been doing is issuing revenue bonds. And these are, like no recourse revenue bonds. So even if the entity was to go belly up, which chances of that happening are very, very slim, there's no recourse to the taxpayers.
With your RFP, are you talking about a open system where this entity just owns the dark fiber and then has service providers come in? Or are you actually talking about also controlling the service provider and having one?
Open access.
Open
Open
system.
access.
So Deborah, I was just up in Calais yesterday and stopped in and chatted with city manager Mike Everett about this. And he mentioned that Calais Baileyville were able to just buy the dark fiber, buy spools of dark fiber, and have that available to Pioneer, which was the people who decided to run it. But Camden Rockport, you guys are looking at maybe a different option, not having the spools, the fiber.
I don't know. And again, that's the purpose of the RFP, to have those,
Okay.
options come back for us to talk about all of that.
Mhm.
The idea of doing it through the regional utility is really to take it out of the towns themselves running it and to
Right, yeah.
sort of semi-privatize it.
Mhm.
And not charge taxpayers for it, but you're charging the people who are using it and so forth. So, and New Hampshire's been doing some very creative things too, in this area in terms of the financing. And so the RFPs that we're going to get back, you guys, it's just how those vendors would see designing the system, what they would offer, how much it's going to cost, in a sort of segregated way. So we could say, well, we like this, but we don't like that. And it does not go to the issue of how to fund it, which of course then is the next part of the discussion, including a possible regional utility.
And who advises you on the financial side? Does Mission provide some consulting on that?
They will, but we haven't contracted for them right now to do that because we have some other folks that we think that, that also could do that for us. And so, we may do that in a separate contract with them. I think it was only another $5,000 or so, if we wanted to go with that part of it was kind of a part 1, 2, and 3 of their proposal. We went part 1 and part 2, the first being the large overview sort of engineering study, the second being the preparation of the RFP and the management of process, and the third being the financial part, which we didn't contract with them for yet.
So Deborah, this is speculation on your part, but I mean, I just read that with Calais Baileyville, they just got Crawford, I think it was Crawford, next town over, west, to sign in to become members of the regional utility. I can hear you. Yeah. Anyway, so is that something that if Camden Rockport were to get something up and running, you would be open to inviting neighboring communities?
Definitely. And every meeting we have, we say that, and we definitely do. We at first, about a year and a half ago or so, we had a meeting in which I think I'm not sure if David Kinney came. He might have come, and I'm not sure about that. Rockland certainly came. Rockland, had some interest. There were a couple of other towns that came. And you know how it is. Sometimes it's just difficult to gather all the cats and herd all the cats and everything. So, and not to call you guys cats or anything, but I'm just saying the more people you get involved, sometimes the harder it is to organize it. So we just decided that we would just get the ball rolling. And if other towns want to hop on, either in the planning process, great. Or if, let's say, we got together a regional utility and then other towns wanted to hop on, again, great. And I know that, as you said, Calais and, sorry, we had some people in our house and they're leaving now and it's created quite the turmoil. But anyway, and so I know that Calais and Baileyville had told me it's been a little while since I've talked to them, and they volunteered to come down here and do presentations for us. I just didn't want to bother them with that until it was really the appropriate time. But they had said that, to jump on like in the regional utility, when I had talked to them last, it didn't have to be a neighboring town, didn't have to be contiguous, it could be anybody. It could be, it could be Thomaston or whatever that could hop on to join Camden or Rockport.
So what are the savings for a regional utility if it's just dark fiber and the regional utility is not running the service themselves?
Well, the savings compared to what? I mean, I think that the idea, I think that the idea is that the ownership of the fiber optic is the utility, like a utility. Okay, it actually owns it. It has its own board of directors, and then it contracts with an entity, whether it be Pioneer, as in the case of Calais and Baileyville, or GWI, or whoever it is, to actually operate the system. That operator, like in the case of Pioneer, that operator might actually be a vendor that's playing and delivering services on the system, but they're actually they're actually maintaining the system. Perhaps they build the system and then they maintain the system, because you always have to have one entity, obviously, right, that's maintaining the system.
Okay.
Even though it's open access.
Okay.
But the savings part of your question, I'm not sure that, I think that having the regional utility is a way of doing it in a way that does, financing it in a way that does not raise the mill rate and for taxpayers.
And then you have competition to get prices down. So if you control the fiber,
Right, absolutely.
Nobody has a monopoly on you, and you can
Exactly.
invite in competition.
Right.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused, forgive me, about the mechanism of that, of the regional utility. So would it be akin to us all doing our own build out of dark fiber, and then this utility is what goes out on our behalf to find a provider to run it?
No.
That's what's confusing to me, as in where the actual ownership of the lines would be, just because Camden Rockport has, their situation is geographically is just vastly different than Lincolnville. Like you described, the 1 mile long driveway that's hard to get it to. That's like every driveway in Lincolnville.
Yeah. Right.
So that's where I was wondering with the regional utility, that makes sense as far as the lobbying power and being able to borrow, not on the backs of the taxpayer. But I didn't really understand how that mechanism would function, because in our case in Lincolnville, there would have to be a massive build out before we could even think about that.
Right. And I'm not really able to answer your question, unfortunately. I know that Calais and Baileyville face the same or similar kinds of questions, and some of the New Hampshire folks have too, and how exactly they've dealt with that, I'm not positive, and that really is the next step. And there's just so many aspects of this that you can't get your arms around everything all at once. But no, but to the first thing that you asked, it's not the towns building it out first. It's what happens is the towns agree to establish the regional utility. The regional utility is then a separate legal entity, and it gets its own funding, and it does the build out. The towns do not do the build out. The regional utility does.
Okay.
How you deal with the various differences between, demographic or geographic, I should say, differences between Lincolnville and Rockport and Camden, that part I can't tell you, other than I can say that my understanding from talking to the previous executive director of the Calais Baileyville regional utility was that they recognized that they needed to kind of cherry pick the places where there was more density, and they would have to go to to those places. They would have to turn on the fiber, be getting the money in, the monthly subscription in order to start, like any business, revenues coming in. And as revenue is coming in, they're building the ability then to take it to some of those further out places, with the commitment that they were going to get to those further out places, but maybe it was going to take an extra year or so.
So in essence, it's actually like towns coming in creating the very same system as the private system because it's a profit-driven system. So if it's not profitable, it's not going to deliver the service to everyone. It sounds like.
Well, I think because the towns are putting it together, the towns basically own the utility. It is a commitment that there's a certain level that you have to get to, that you have to provide to everybody. But there's a recognition that everybody doesn't get everything on day one
Mm-hmm.
because
What
it
is your
has to be
timeline?
a business.
Yeah, Deborah, what is
Yeah,
your
that's where I see that's where I see a discrepancy between it being a municipal or public utility or not, because usually with a public or municipal utility, the first goal is delivering a service and then profitability, where it seems like this model, like I said, is still like a private sector model where profitability comes first. And then if it's profitable, then the people who are underserved may get service.
No, I think it's something in between what you just said. It's a commitment to give them service. It's a recognition that you have to get revenue in first in order to sort of prioritize in what order you do certain things. But it's a commitment to get it there, because I know that Calais and Baileyville, from the conversations with town manager, previous town manager, and I had with them, that there was that commitment. And I do have, and you guys, I'm not going to profess to be an expert on how Calais and Baileyville operate, but I do have the prior executive director gave me their, I'm a lawyer, and gave me their legal documents and everything that establishes it. So some of these questions might be pretty, pretty answerable through our taking a look at those legal documents, which I just haven't poured through.
Great. George, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just, what is your timeline in terms of implementation?
Well, we are finalizing the contract right now with Mission for their services. There were a couple of us that wanted to be a little bit more specific in the contract that Camden and Rockport signs, and so I have to say that it actually sits on my desk. I'm the one that's holding it up for the last week or so. So as soon as I get over some time deadlines in the next couple of days, then we're going to be getting that signed contract to Mission in the next, I would say, week or so. And then Mission was going to need, sorry, I don't have that right in front of me, but I think Mission was going to need about 6 weeks or so to do the high level design. We were going to have maybe 8 weeks or so for something like that, for the vendors to come back in response to the RFP. So, I mean, we're talking about a matter of several months to hopefully have a return to RFPs.
Okay, so this essentially is something that's going to happen in the next calendar year.
Oh, yeah. Well, the RFPs.
Yes.
And the next step then is to, really put our heads to how to make it happen financially. And that includes the whole issue of the regional, possible regional utility, or doing some other creative New Hampshire kind of hybrid sort of situation. So all of those things will be discussed and hopefully implemented by, the end of a year from now, I hope.
What percent of your residents have fiber optic now?
Oh, just a handful, probably a couple handfuls.
Really?
It's anybody
Well,
who jumped
sorry.
on to the town's network, and that's not very many.
But I would like to say that everybody in Camden Rockport has access to speeds through Spectrum and other companies that are easily 5 times faster than what we can get here.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys get, but yeah, I mean, certainly
download.
it's it all depends on how far you are from a node. And I have a house, I have a second house, we're trying to sell our current house, and then we're buying another house, and my speeds are vastly different than the guy across the street, and so it just all depends on how far you are from nodes and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also the issue of reliability. So yes, you're right that we're not underserved, or we're not in a situation where we're going to be able to get any kind of grants or any kind of assistance, and we're not we definitely have service, but whether it's sufficient service really depends a lot on where you're at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, and I didn't mean that to be adversarial at all. It's just, I just feel it's relevant because, even the fiber optic, Josh has fiber optic in Lincolnville, but he still has a slower speed than most people who have cable in Camden and Rockport. So that's why it's the question of how many people have fiber optic. It can be important, but I feel like it's more important of the quality of service that you
Yeah.
guys are.
And plus expense, I think that, cheaper, faster, I forget we have a 3-word motto. It's, like cheaper, faster, better, or something like that. But cheaper is first, and it's first because it gets people's attention. I mean, even the people who think, oh, my speed's okay, but cheaper is important. And depending on who you go with, and this is not true necessarily with every fiber provider out there, certainly I can tell you that, I get 1 gig of service from GWI and it costs me $70 a month. And that's way cheaper than, what a lot of people pay to Spectrum, and certainly way cheaper than what I pay to Spectrum for 1/10 of the speed in my other house.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, yeah, well, I was just thinking, Deborah, the differences between Lincolnville, Camden, Rockport, and Calais, Baileyville, I mean, one of the big differences is the number of businesses that you guys have, Calais, Baileyville has, but Lincolnville does not have. So there isn't that big economic driver or big economic voice, that is. There are a lot of people who
You'd be
need it.
surprised, Mike. We don't have storefronts here, but there's a lot of people doing a lot of.
I agree with you, but what I was just starting to say is that there isn't a chamber of commerce like voice that you get with storefronts. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And where you guys have that, Calais, Baileyville certainly has that, and I'm wondering, is that an obstacle that you guys are looking at so far, or have you looked at that?
Not really, because honestly, it hasn't been the businesses, the storefronts that have been stepping forward and saying, hey, we need this.
Okay.
It's really been the homes and home businesses that have been. So
Okay.
It might be more of a apples to apples. And I should say one thing: when I said it was $70 a month, it is $70 a month for me, and that's because I'm grandfathered into GWI's old prices. GW's prices did go up some from that, but it's still you can get fantastic speeds for less than $100 a month. I just didn't want you to go back and say, well, that's not what they have on their website, and she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's my bill, but it's grandfathered in.
Deborah, I was just wondering if there was any contentious debate on either select board to get to the point you're at now. It sounds from what you're saying that it was fairly unanimous, getting to where the task force is in terms of going forward with the RFP.
Well, I think that when you look back at the select board as it existed at the time that Rockport was sort of leading the charge with their public-private partnership, 5 or 6 years ago, that select board was very supportive, and that's still technically the policies that they set at that time are still technically intact for our current select board, and which is something I always like to remind folks of. I think the problem in that case was the select board was further ahead than their own residents, and I think that they have acknowledged that, in retrospect. Then after the loss of that initiative for the $300,000, then they just kind of retreated and didn't do anything on the topic for the next year or two. And then I came on board a couple of years ago and started up the kind of small, inching back into it. So having said that, where our current select board is in Rockport, I think that the majority is supportive of moving ahead with fiber optic, and certainly if it's not going to raise taxes. I think that the Camden Select Board, from what I understand, is even more solidly in favor of going forward. But I wouldn't overstate the case for Rockport.
Mhm.
But I guess we're more there than it sounds like the Lincolnville Select Board perhaps is.
Well, we just haven't had a conversation about these possibilities. It hasn't even been on the agenda. So I'm hopeful when all the information is laid out to the board, and once our resident survey data has been presented, that perhaps they'll get there.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I personally, as the chair of the select board, in Rockport, I think it's personally important to take it step by step. Because if you hit everybody, whether it's residents or the select board, with this grand plan all at one time, then it's tough. But if you take it slowly, step by step, then I think that it's helping us to get there more successfully.
It's a really elegant solution politically, because the money is there to pay for the nonprofit to provide this service if you get it right. And everybody wants to have the control over the quality and the cost. So I like what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. And obviously COVID is a horrible thing, but COVID is actually, I think, helped people understand. I mean, my parents are 90 and 95 years old, and they live in an apartment in my house. They've been doing telehealth during this whole pandemic period, and they get it, and people, you can talk, theoretically about how you can be monitored and visit your doctor from your home and all that kind of stuff. But now they see it and they experience it. And it's like, wow, this is important stuff, especially when you live in Maine in the winter. Down a dirt road can make it tough.
Do we have any other questions for Deborah?
Well, good luck, you guys.
Thank you
We will
so
be-
much for your
We will
time.
be in touch.
Yeah, and seriously,
Deborah.
Camden and Rockport, we would all welcome, you guys joining forces with us now or later or whatever. We really want to make this a regional initiative. So,
Great.
Yeah.
all right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Give your dog a pat for us.
All right. Bye.
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 Okay, great. Do we have any discussion about that among our committee?
I guess I just, note the timing issue that, we're talking about something that's going to happen in the next 18 months. So plenty of time for Lincolnville to participate if it decides to.
Yeah. And it is a type of organization that we have experience with. The Mayco Solid Waste Corporation is a quasi-municipal corporation that all 4 towns have representatives on, but it's not owned by the town per se. So I think we have a history of getting along and working together, even though Camden, Rockport, and Lincolnville Hope are different. We're also, I think we have enough similarities to make it work.
Well, and if we were able to be there from the ground up and build in stipulations and protections built around the uniqueness of the challenges that we have as a town, I mean, it can only benefit us to have, just to band together and have more lobbying power or more power in general. I mean, that was definitely, it's nice to hear all these different options.
Yeah, it would be nice, if you don't want to have every town hire its own consultant. And, setting up this type of nonprofit has happened throughout the history of this country. So everybody knows how to do it. And the question is, I think Jordan asked this, is the different towns have different characteristics. And so how do you come up with a structure that's equitable? Because we're not the same, and there's denser populations in those 2 towns than there are out here, but those things could be worked out. So I guess I kind of echo George's question, which is, if they're doing the RFP and having the analysis done, and if we wait and come in after that analysis is done, I guess you could then have the analysis redone to cover us, but it does create timing questions. And I
Yeah,
think,
David, I agree. If they're in the stages where they're going to be putting out an RFP, I would think it would be beneficial for us to be part of that RFP rather than come back after the fact and that's already been done. And now you kind of have to start all over again just for Lincolnville. It would be nice to already be with the people going in for the RFP.
particularly where it's a cost of $10,000.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
and I would
imagine
expect that cost to rise. If it's, I think it was 18,000 I had heard between the two communities. So it was close to 10 between Camden and Rockport. So, maybe it's 25,000 for Lincolnville to be included also. But I think that, it makes sense for us to be included in that RFP process.
I mean, absolutely. If it was up to me, then we would be calling them tomorrow and say, yes, add us to the RFP. But we have, that's not realistic to get that kind of blessing from our select board yet.
Well, and don't we also need some of the technical and engineering information that the consultant was going to put together?
That would be what paying the consultant would do. They would be spending that money drawing up the technical engineering specs for the
To
RFP.
submit with the RFP. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, what they're talking about. So Mission would design the RFP, which puts out the scope of work for what they want these different providers to price out for them. And then they get these proposals and they can see whether it's feasible. And it would be a shame if we wanted to be part of this and we kind of missed that process.
Yeah, but I do. Yeah, but we need
Josh,
to
Josh, I would push back a little bit on the feeling that the selectmen aren't ready for this. You got two selectmen on this board, on this committee. And if something's about, if the ship's about to leave the dock on this, and it's, again, if this group really has their act together, which from tonight's presentation seems like they do, we should look into it more. I think we need to speed up what we're doing and advocate for, the right thing. And we could spend a lot of time doing what we're already doing, or we could be part of this and get there, much sooner than any of us would have expected before hearing from Deborah tonight. So I think we could be open-minded about maybe speeding up our process if this group is as coherent and as organized as they appear to be from her discussion.
Okay, well, let's first start out by asking each other right now how just our initial feelings about what Camden Rockport are doing and Lincolnville joining in. I mean, how do you all feel about that at this moment?
I think they're doing what we want to be doing. I think, we met with a consultant who said, here's what I can do, and here's the next step, and here's the cost. And they're in the process of now setting that up. And, I don't know anything about that consultant, but it seems like it's a much lower rate than the numbers we had heard. Because I think who we heard from was Casco Bay.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. So they were aware of who we already spoke to. And they found somebody else who, was a little more local, who was much more affordable. So they've kind of done that legwork already. I think it really makes sense to join them as soon as we can.
Gina, how do you feel?
I agree. We
I
need
guess
to
I would,
try and roll with it.
yeah, my sense is that based upon the timeline that you described, that there are 3 or 4 months during which the RFP, the consulting is going to go on, the RFP is going to be put together. It seems to me that, I continue to feel that we should complete the survey and have that in our pocket. And then once we have that in our pocket, and maybe that's a month, we then have, direct conversation with them to see, how we can piggyback on what they've already done. It does seem to me that we're probably not going to have to start again from ground zero if we join them in the process a couple of months down the line. But it does seem to me that, you know, we should be moving towards that. It seems like a great opportunity. I wonder, the question I think that David raised in terms of their existing fiber penetration is different than ours, right? Because we have a much higher percentage of existing fiber.
Much higher, yeah.
But
But it's not ours, so it almost doesn't matter.
right. I mean,
Right.
but you know, it would be kind of, I guess my sense is, let's push on on getting the survey as far as we can get it in terms of having a mail solicitation, and then try to approach the selectmen, you know, with the recommendation. This is the idea of the train leaving the station. I think it's not going to. I think we have a couple of months here where we could join them without there being a large incremental cost, because the process they're talking about is a 12-month process in terms of getting the recommendations. We're well into next year, and I think we'd have opportunity to join them. I may be mistaken, but it seems to me that we don't have to do this tomorrow, but we have to think about doing it perhaps before the end of the year.
That was my sense as well.
Mhm.
Mike, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with George. My guess is that there are a few months. I think we could get a more precise timeline or deadline if we were to simply call up Deborah or participate in one of the task force meetings and ask them how soon, when does the train leave the station? How soon do we need to do this? I would urge against any advocacy towards the select board and trying to sway an
Yeah.
opinion. Making recommendations within the confines of the charge makes a heck of a lot of sense, which is what all that they expect to hear, because they have given the charge. They expect to hear things within the confines of that charge. And so to try to urge the select board to do one thing or another
will backfire in your
I
face.
think it will. I think it will.
I'm just gonna.
Let's just get the job done that they expect us to get done, which is to get a survey, which is reasonable, make recommendations, and say or lay out options. And if we reach consensus on one of those being better than the other, make those recommendations. I think that's all that they need to hear. And we got a few months. We can find out specifically how much time we have if we're to talk to the Camden Rockport task force and say, how much time do we have?
Like, cause they're initial stages here, right? They're doing a consultancy to put together an RFP. So this is early times.
Yeah.
In terms of this becoming gelled into something that we couldn't join. I think that was my sense of it.
Right, and I'm not so sure that the differences between Camden Rockport and Lincolnville, or the unique character that Lincolnville has, is going to create a whole new, throw the whole RFP thing into having to be redone. It could be a very simple process to kind of tweak it here and there. But we don't know that because we haven't talked with them. This is our first conversation we've had with them. Yeah.
I will say, just from my experience on the select board, which you can see just from watching the select board meetings, there have been members of the select board that have been frustrated working with Camden and Rockport on a variety of issues. So, so the idea of working with them yet again on a new project, is something that it would need to really pass a threshold where it is abundantly clear that it's a good idea for the town. So I think that's really important to just keep in mind that reality, I guess, with the current makeup of the select board.
If we're able to, maybe we can have some kind of agreed upon goal about our survey and what a timeline would be, because we're kind of waving around, and maybe we want to solidify more what our goal number is we want to reach so that we can get to the next steps that we're talking about.
Well, yeah, I think that giving the select board either a number we want to reach or my thinking has evolved throughout this meeting, but this is my current thinking on this, is that we probably we should give them a deadline for when we are done gathering information for the purposes of giving them a report, so they can include that in the new charge, because they want to write a new charge. So I think they'll want to hear, when we'll be done collecting data. But I'll just, I'll still keep the survey live. There's no reason not to, but.
Right.
So don't we have to get the answer from David Kinney as to how quickly we can get out the written mailing, and then we can back into what our schedule is?
That makes sense. To that point, how much time? So assuming David Kinney can send those out, Monday, how many weeks after they're sent out do we want to wait as a committee for those responses to come in?
Let's say
3.
a month.
A month, Jordan, you said how long?
Yeah, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Beginning of October.
I guess I would look to make it less than that. I think if people are going to answer the survey, they're going to do it within a week or two of getting it.
Yeah, I would think 2
Otherwise,
weeks.
it's stale.
Good point.
Right, because otherwise it just gets put in a pile. I'm speaking from personal delinquency.
Exactly.
I wasn't necessarily saying the response date. I was saying the date to have this all done, because we get the
Yeah.
response and then we collate it and then we,
Right.
finish it all up.
But that can happen very quickly,
Yeah.
Unless we get 1,000 responses, and then that'll take some time, but I don't see that happening.
Would that be the case?
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I mean, once it's in Google Forms, it's all there, organized. So, and when you look at the spreadsheet that it spits out, it's quite nice. Now, but you are right. There is some legwork to be done in the spreadsheet in terms of when people don't just choose a pre-filled option and they write in a number, you sort of have to lump that in with one of the groups, and that could take some time. Okay, well, I will reach out to David Kinney tomorrow regarding how quickly he can get us that. And then trying to think, when is our next select board meeting? Is it on Monday?
14th. Monday the 14th.
14th?
It's not, because Monday's Labor Day.
Right,
So
got
it's
it,
been
okay.
pushed up the week.
Right, okay. Okay, so let me think. So what should I tell David? Or rather, what should we tell the select board in terms of when we think we'll be ready to present something?
If David tells you a particular date that he can have it ready to go out, I think what
Yeah.
I just heard the group say is we want to give ourselves
So 2 weeks after that.
3 weeks to finish it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
And then is there anything else? I'm just going to look at the charge right now and just see if there's anything else that we need to present to the board that we haven't finalized yet, or we haven't worked on. Here, let me actually bring this up. Number 3, I guess it would be nice to make a map of the town, showing where the gaps exist.
Okay, so on number 3, Josh, where
Hard to-
are we with getting the information from LCI? I thought
We have it.
we have it. Okay.
I believe I sent that out.
You did.
You did.
Okay, yeah, that's a whole spreadsheet showing who has access to fiber optic and who doesn't.
Okay, so it's going from a spreadsheet to a map, which would be a nice thing for everybody to see.
But then the question is, do we want to compare LCI's data with what we gather from the survey? Do we want to just trust what they're sending us, or do we want to, compare all the addresses? I guess the question is, how much time do we want to put into working with
That Well, my initial thought is that unless we see like this glaring discrepancy right off, we have to go with their numbers, unless we want to put the time into it and
Yeah.
verify.
I'd rather not present LCI's numbers because we already know that they're not accurate. And presenting those numbers to a board that's already very hesitant about this concerns me. Just does.
Then we can do our own analysis, or we can give the board those numbers and say, we're not so sure how accurate these are. It's your call.
I mean, we really need to have a consultant to get that map. I mean, that's the whole crux of it, is getting the analysis of the town, because otherwise it's like playing pin the tail on the donkey.
Well, then we can't really do it in the time we have to operate, right? It does
Well, we
seem to me
can make that as a point to the selectmen when we make a presentation that in order to fulfill this charge, we really need to hire a consultant, because there's no way for us to draw a coverage map without having that technical data.
Yeah, I like Mike's idea. Present the LCI information, put an asterisk. We don't know if it's accurate.
Right.
And Jordan's point, you need our own analysis, but here's what we got. I wouldn't spend more time on it. I wouldn't try to, analyze that ourselves. I don't think we'd be that effective at it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So once it's been mailed out, once we waited 2 to 3 weeks, once we've inputted all of the paper responses, I'll send out the full spreadsheet to everyone, and we can start playing with the numbers and finding trends and coming up with a nice report from that. Okay. I guess that agenda item really moved around, but that's fine. Okay. So action items, number 7.
I'd like to volunteer to call Deborah back up to ask her the questions we're asking about what their timeframes are, and be clearer about, what the window is for us to either participate or not participate, and also understand better if we come in, a year from now, how impactful is that on them?
Great.
That'd
That's
be
great.
nice.
Okay, and I'm going to reach out to David Kinney regarding how quickly he can get us the addresses and stamps and envelopes and printed copies of the survey, so we can send those out.
I got a question for you, Josh, on that.
Yeah.
Since we're an ad hoc committee without a budget, can David just make that happen? That is, stamps cost money, so.
Right, they do cost money. I'm not sure. So the select board, they seem to be nodding in agreement that this is something that they want to do. But I'll just ask David and we'll see what he says.
Let's just
his sense of it.
yeah, just apologize later. Just do it now and apologize later if necessary. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other action items?
Josh, I did want to say I'm looking at that spreadsheet now that LCI had sent out, and they had a column for on the net. So I presume that to be who is within their network scope, and another column for who's an active user and who's inactive. So we do have confirmation of who actually does have the service. Now there's a question mark on who's on network but inactive, because that may not quite be true, or maybe you're 2 miles from the actual service connection, but we do have confirmation of who does actually have the service in those addresses.
Okay, great. Is anyone here an expert in GIS mapping with databases and overlaying maps?
That's not why I'm raising my hand. No, I'm not.
Too bad. Yes, Mike.
I was going to suggest that I could follow up with Callis Baileyville and talk with their. I talked with the city manager yesterday when I was up there about this, and he recommended that we talk with a guy named Danny Sullivan, who's kind of the mover and shaker on the regional board there.
Great.
And I'll contact him. I've got his number, and I'd like to find out what are some of the differences between the Calais-Baileyville model and what we got at Camden Rockport, and ask some specific questions about how they did their local financing.
Could you invite them to our next meeting?
Well, I could, but we keep doing that and not focusing on like getting a report out and getting a survey done. So,
Yeah, but look at what we're learning. I mean, tonight,
well, I know it's great. It's great. We're
Yeah.
learning a heck of a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, I know if that's what we want, if that's what you want to do.
maybe not the next meet, maybe the next meeting, we should focus more on, whatever we want to focus on and not have outside people come in. But at some point, I'd love to hear from them.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, the city manager, volunteered this guy and said he's one of those enthusiastic evangelicals who will love to talk broadband and would love to zoom in, that type of thing. So
I would say why not invite him to the next meeting? Because I honestly don't think we should be making recommendations until we have the survey data, until, we've collected all the survey data, all of us have poured through it, digested that, and then we all come together as a committee and then talk about it and then form our recommendations. I think that makes the most sense to do it in that order. So in that sense, we're still collecting data in 2 weeks, so I don't see the
Okay.
harm in inviting him.
Agreed.
then that's what I'll do if that's what you want me to do. Yeah.
That sounds
Thank you.
great.
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any other action items?
Nope.
Okay, non-agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Okay, I have one. I got an email from a member of the Belfast Broadband Committee. I'm surprised and impressed that members of other communities have been watching our meetings. I think
Scary, huh? Yeah.
I think it's scary, but it's wonderful too. That we have a following, we have an audience because people are so passionate about this. But I'll just kind of give you the cliff notes of what this person said. I'm not. Let's see. They think the idea of joining together with Rockport and Camden is a great idea. Utility district is the best way forward. You should find out who owns the utility poles of Lincolnville and Belfast. 95% are owned by Spectrum. Spectrum, Consolidated Communications, LCI, GWI, all lease pole space from CMP. If your poles are a mix of CMP and LCI owned, then things might get more complicated, but pole leases are PUC regulated. So it kind of goes into that. So, and mentions the survey is pretty flawed, but is probably the best you're going to get. Be prepared to acknowledge its flaws when citizens criticize your conclusions, but still continue to use the info to validate your efforts. A good return on the survey is 5%, and amazing return is 20%. You will never get to your 500 responses, so set a time limit and work with what you get in that time frame. Belfast got 500 responses to our survey out of a population of about 6,000. About 100 businesses also responded to a separate survey. We mailed a postcard to every postal location with a URL printed to send people online to take the survey. We printed about 50 and had them available at Town Hall, Library, YMCA, but only a couple dozen were returned that way. You'll hear a lot about federal and state money that is available for grants. Be prepared to work hard for them. It's a frustrating process. More successful to go without. And then mentions the biggest problem with those grant programs is the money ends up going direct to the ISP to subsidize their build outs. And then you're left with the same old situation where the prices go up, service goes down, and the town has no leverage to help the consumer. Yeah, so I thought that was really nice that this person wrote a thoughtful email giving us pointers.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other non-agenda items? Okay, why don't we schedule our next meeting? Let's see, it is the third select board meets in 2 weeks. Do we want to meet as soon as the 17th or, oh wait, no, Mike and I may have select board meetings. A select board meeting on Thursday.
Oh, those the workshop
The workshops, yeah.
Okay.
How about the 24th?
I think the
How about the
24th
24th?
sounds great.
Yeah,
That
looks
work for
good.
everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I will let you, I'll let you guys know, as soon as I talk to Dan Sullivan guy, if he's gonna make it or not, on the 24th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Number 24. Okay. Great. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
I will
Move it.
motion to adjourn.
Okay. Jordan moved it. Gina seconded. All right. Any discussion? All right, I'll call a vote. Gina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Mike, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jonathan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. George,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Okay. And I vote yes. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Hey,
good
good
night.
night.
Meeting.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Leave meeting. Trying to leave the meeting here, David. It's not letting me leave.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.